Good day, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Oakville Chamber of Commerce's live stream lunches. Today we have Rishi Bandhu from Bandhu Law Professional Corporation. Rishi, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, we got a bunch of questions to get through here and some pretty valuable information for our members, so I think we should just get right into it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. What has been the biggest challenge employers have been facing since the pandemic started?
You know, it's going to depend a little bit on the nature of the business. And I think there's two broad categories of businesses that have been affected. Those businesses that have been forced to close and perhaps remain closed. And secondly, those businesses that are open. So for the ones that are closed, one of the biggest challenges for them have been the uncertainty with the pandemic and dealing with the layoffs and not knowing when they can recall and when the deemed termination dates are going to be. Fortunately, the Ontario government has been pretty cooperative in that respect in terms of extending timelines so that there aren't deemed terminations. Now, for businesses that are open, and fortunately in Halton, most businesses have been allowed to open for the most part, and as we currently are, the biggest challenge for them has been ensuring workplace safety, right? COVID is just extraordinarily difficult to deal with. We've never dealt with it before. So ensuring that all precautions reasonable in the circumstances have been taken is challenging in the circumstances. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
The second thing is employee absences as well. That's been very challenging for businesses.
Okay, and so employee absences, layoffs, and whatnot does lead into questions about paid sick days. So what are employees entitled to at the moment?
Yeah, we're certainly hearing a lot about that and a lot of demands for increased sick time. So at the moment, under the Employment Standards Act, employees are entitled to 3 sick days per year. Those are unpaid though, right? So it's useful to remember back in 2018 with Premier Wynne, the Liberal government had introduced under Bill 148 enhanced emergency leave protections. And under that, 2 out of 10 days, emergency leave days, would be paid. We may remember that there was a huge hue and cry about that. And then once Premier Ford and his government were elected, they rolled that back with Bill 147, such that now it's 3 sick days, but it's unpaid. And I think, Shane, it's highly unlikely, given the indications from the government, that they are going to reintroduce some sort of paid sick time.
Okay. So, on the laws behind this, has there been any major changes that, employers would need to be aware of?
Yeah, there's no doubt. So one major change in relation to COVID has been the extension of the timeframes for layoffs. So effectively, what the government said was that anybody who was laid off in relation to COVID, and specifically I'm talking about non-unionized employees, those employees would be deemed to be on infectious disease emergency leave. Right? And that leave would continue for a period of time. So originally it continued until September. They extended that till January, and it's been extended again until July. So once July hits, if the government doesn't make any further changes, then a clock is going to start to tick, whereby the employers may be liable for termination and severance pay because there's going to be a deemed termination of employment.
Yeah. So just a quick opinion, do you see any further extensions past that, or is that still really up in the air?
You know what, it's hard to say. My guess is as good as anybody's, but there's a lot of concern right now about these variants. And although the numbers are going down, I'm hearing talk about additional lockdowns. And if that's the case, given that the government has already extended the deadline a couple of times, I really wouldn't be surprised if they did it again.
Well, okay, well, that'll certainly be good news for some of our members. Now, what is one thing that our employers can do to protect themselves, down the road?
Great question. So there was a case that came out in 2020 dealing with employment contracts, sort of unrelated to COVID, but maybe relevant if terminations of employment come up. In any event, what this Court of Appeal decision said was that if contracts are using certain language, specifically just cause language, to deny an employee their statutory minimum rights to termination and severance pay, that language may be invalid. And if that language is invalid, then the clause in that contract gets completely struck out. And then the obligation reverts to what's called reasonable notice of termination. So the employer would then have to provide termination based on age, length of service, nature of employment. Whereas in that contract, what they intended to do was terminate based on the minimum entitlements under the law, which could be as little as 1 week and as much as 8 weeks plus severance pay. So this really took the employment law community by storm, because many contracts have been using this just cause language for years. So as a result of this decision, there could be lots of contracts out in the market between employers and employees that are simply invalid. So employers really should be contacting their employment lawyers to look at that language and see if it can be fixed.
Do you have any of this information listed on your website?
For sure. So we do have a resources section. So there's a couple things. One is there's an HR 101 where we address frequently asked questions, and that's a bit of a work in progress, but we're building that, and there's a number of relevant topics there. And then on a weekly basis, we're posting a blog, and a lot of this information is there.
Okay. I just quickly rhyme off the website. We might as well make it easy for folks to find you. We'll have it on information afterwards, but might as well throw it out here now.
Yeah, so you can find me at blpc.ca.
Okay, perfect.
Or workplaceadvocacy.ca.
Okay, great. Okay, and as I say, folks, we're going to have that information on the site, or just contact us and we can get you through to Rishi here. Now, there's a lot of talk about vaccines right now, obviously. Is this something that employers will be able to require?
This is a really tough question, Shane, and it's something obviously that we haven't anticipated. Now, I did write an article on this, and you can find that on my website as well, where I take the reader through these issues. It's a tricky issue, especially for small workplaces, dental clinics, health clinics, periodontists, small clinics where aerosols are a big issue, where they're working in very tight proximity with each other and with patients. They've had to make significant changes in their workplace in order to guard against this pandemic. So naturally, now that this vaccine is becoming more readily available, they're looking at that as a potential solution to ensure safety in the workplace. The problem is, as you know, people have various objections to vaccines, right? Whether they're based in conspiracy theories or based in disability or religious objection. Taking that vaccine is not a universal thing. So employees are going to have objections. The simple answer, can the employer require it? Yes and no. I think from my perspective, and as I discuss in my article, if you're hiring new employees, there's nothing wrong with putting in an employment contract that we want you to be vaccinated. The exception to that would be if there are disability-based or religious-based objections. In that case, then human rights obligations are triggered, and then the employer would have to attempt to accommodate up to undue hardship. The really tricky piece, Shane, is with respect to existing employees, and I think that's where employers are going to have their hands tied. What they can't do is say, there's the door if you're not going to vaccinate.
Right. Well, it's certainly a hot button subject because I speak to our members all day, and it's a question I hear a lot. So thank you for that. We've got really time for one more question here. So what is on the horizon for employees for 2021? Employer, more accurately, is who I'd rather find. Yeah, on this one.
Yeah, so 2021 and beyond, I would say. So number one, obviously the pandemic, how this is going to resolve, where the numbers are going to go, we don't know. Are layoffs going to continue to be deemed infectious disease emergency leave? We're not sure. So that's a big outstanding question. The second question that's percolating, and there was a decision from the Supreme Court of Canada on this, is with respect to the duty of good faith in employment relationships and honest relations. And so employers are increasingly being held to the standard of good faith with respect to their employees and being honest with them and being forthright in terms of dismissal. And courts are starting to more recognize that employees have really their self-esteem tied up in their job. And I think we're going to see more and more protection of that going forward.
Well, Rishi, I want to thank you for this. This is a very hot button subject for our members. This everything that you were talking about today, because they're all wondering right now how this is going to get handled moving forward. So, folks, if you want to learn more about what Rishi has to offer, more detail about it, give us a call. We'll get you connected with Rishi. You can go on to our website. His information is there as well. Rishi, thank you very kindly for helping us out with this today. We really appreciate you doing this. Aside from that, everybody go out there, be prosperous. We really appreciate all your help too. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
Cheers.